Strength. It's not just about lifting bars. It resides within every unique journey. This is To The Bar. Strength in every story. We're a community, a platform where stories meet strength. Our podcast is the result of our passion for weightlifting. From the first lift to the last, we're here to bring you the latest weightlifting news, to unravel the intricacies of the sport that will make you want to grab a barbell and hit the platform. This is To The Bar. Strength in every story. And now for today's show.
Welcome to The Bar. Today we're joined by Khrys Speed, who is the founder and head coach of Ronin Strength.
Yeah, that's right.
We're your hosts, Aaron Holt.
And I'm Jess Roebuck-Slaney.
So yeah, welcome.
Well, thanks for having me.
No, thank you for coming down. It's always a pleasure seeing you. One of the things that I know as a TO, whenever I turn up to a competition and sort of sat in the warm-up area, whenever I see Ronin and you guys, I sort of know that we're in for an easier ride.
He's laughing like, is that true?
Yes. You kidding?
Sure?
No, seriously. Because I think it's one of those things that we see, you know, different levels of competition, but we see different levels of coaches that come through, some that have competition experience. The athletes that you train, they're always a good, sort of quite a high standard, so it's always a pleasure watching them warm up and go out on the platform as well. But it's also from, you know, one of our favourite sort of areas of the competition platform is being the Marshall's table, and you guys know how to use the Marshall's table and the athlete can't. So it is appreciated, and one thing I've noticed as well is that you tend to sort of have like a mentorship as well. So you'll bring coaches through, and you'll be with them and guide them through the process. It's not just simply a case of coaches get pushed out into the wild and you know, fend for yourself. And is that a purposeful thing that it's not just a coaching session of like you can deal with with an athlete, so therefore you can do everything?
Yeah, I suppose the way that I've looked at it is when it comes to coaching, when you're trying to do it for a job, you're trying to give someone like a service, like you're trying to give them something they're paying for. So if you're saying, I'm going to take you to competition and make sure it's an easier ride, you need to make sure you do that. So you need to know the rules probably a bit more than they do sometimes. So a lot of athletes, when they go into their first comp, they're not going to know all the rules, like, can I wear tape on my elbow? Oh, you know, the little loop you have on your wrist wraps that you have to put in, like all those little things, you need to know them so that you can just tell them, so that you go like, oh, just put that in. Oh, just make sure after your lift, tell me what you want because you've only got a minute to put it back down again. Make sure that like, just making sure that they slowly learn the process over time rather than giving them all this information and then they have to worry about all of it whilst they're also nervous about lifting. Yeah. So you're there to do a job, we're paid to do a job, so you need to make sure it's a good one. So if we've got coaches coming through, we do now do a mentorship where we go through this in a bit more of like a structured fashion, but it's just, if I'm going to take you to competition to coach someone, I need to make sure you're going to do a good job. Because if you don't do a good job and someone bombs or doesn't get the total they could have got because of you, then that reflects bad on all of us. Exactly. We haven't done a good job, haven't done what we've been paid to do. Yeah. Like it's the same as like if you ask a plasterist, you know, like sort of like touch up, you know, your bathroom walls, and then they just do the living room by accident and forget the bathroom. They go, oh, but I did try, I kind of did it. I kind of did the same thing. It's like, well, no, I'm not paying you for that. So if someone takes you to competition, you make bad choices, you forget to put their attempt in because you didn't do it in time, you've not done a good job. And I think that's where things are slowly changing because people are looking at weightlifting because of CrossFit largely, where it's like, it's a job. It's like, it's an actual profession, so you need to make sure you treat it as that. So if coaches are coming through to coach me at competition, that's where almost all of our like big influxes of sign-ups come in. So after the English or British, whether we do well or some of the athletes don't have the best time, we'll get sign-ups off of that. So we need to make sure that we're displaying ourselves at our best as coaches and athletes. We need to make sure we look like we know what we're doing, because we do. Yeah. So that if a coach is coming through for the first time to help a comp, I'm not going to let them do it by themselves. I'll say, can you help me just load their bar, and I'll tell you what to do and talk them through the board and stuff. Because it's really basic stuff like, how long was it you were competing in weightlifting before someone told you, oh, remember, so if you've got 6 sets you need to get your opener, you probably want to take a set every other person's attempt who's in front of you. And it's 2 lifts, don't count minutes. You don't have time, you've got lifts beforehand. Yeah. That's really simple, but no one tells you, and you just figure it out yourself a lot of the time. Yeah. Even just telling a coach that, they're like, oh, I can actually count the board now, and now I understand when to warm them up. Otherwise you get someone who's gone, I've warmed them up, I've messed this up. They've hit their opener and they've got 20 minutes now. Or they've only just touched a bar, they're out in 2. So it's that kind of small, simple stuff that's not necessarily, it's not information that's easy to find, but it's not difficult. It's like not difficult to learn. That you have to give them, I think.
Yeah.
It's a good way of thinking about it from a business perspective in terms of like the British or the English being a marketing opportunity really for coaches and for clubs, and thinking about how you perform there as a coach, then bringing in new athletes. I hadn't really thought about it like that from a coach's perspective.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you do it very well, as a club and a team. That it's quite an obvious thing when you come. All the coaches know what they're doing, and you just come off the back of the
English age groups,
and I think every competition we go to, we'll always see new coaches come in and be like, get to the desk and like, what do I do? Which is great, it gives us a bit more time to sort of help and guide, and I think it breaks down that relationship of us being a TO and then being a coach, or it sort of helps smooth things over a bit. So quite good. Yeah.
So that leads quite nicely, I think, into one of the questions we had about your coach the coaches sort of seminar thing. And I don't know that I necessarily had a question other than, what is it? Do you want to give us more
so
info?
the mentorship is supposed to be, it's all going to be online. We finally got a date to start. It's going to start end of March so that we have time to get people to sign up. And the idea is it's not just about coaching you, here's a technical model, because you get the basic stuff in the British weightlifting course. As much as I've been critical of it, if you don't know what you're doing, it makes sure that you're safe, you kind of know what you're doing. But in terms of, if you already know how to train, if you already know roughly how to kind of interact with people and coach, you've got social skills, then you do that course and you go, well, I don't know what I'm doing now. Like, as in, do I know how to count the ball? I'm qualified to run a club and count the ball and to coach people in the back room. I'm DBS checked, I've got safeguarding, but how do I count the board? How do I get people into my club? Like, how do I sign people up? Do I use spreadsheets to program? How do I use Instagram to make sure I get business in? Because I don't want to have to pay for marketing, so I shouldn't have to. It's all that stuff. So making sure that you actually know how to use social media properly, because it's not that complicated. You just need to make sure you're putting out helpful stuff consistently, and then teaching people what actual technical principles are. So you understand when you get, let's say, like me and Aaron are probably built for weightlifting. What we just built to have stuff plonked on top of us. It's why we respond well to just snatching, clean, jerking, squatting and stuff. But then when you get people who, let's say, are longer limbed, who struggle with the movements, how do you apply the same technical principles to them so you don't just end up trying to make everyone lift the same and then half the people lift well, half of them don't? Yeah. How do you coach that? How do you make it so that you understand how a lot of the CrossFit general conditioning stuff does cross over to weightlifting? How do you coach that? How do you actually interact with athletes at a competition? How do you talk to people? Like, all the stuff that you need to do so that you can run a successful business and actually coach as a job, that most of the stuff doesn't cover. Because qualifying someone being like, oh, you understand first pull, second pull, third pull, you understand sets and reps, you understand some safeguarding stuff, okay, off you go, isn't really good enough. Like, and when you're paying upwards of $1,000, it's like, but I'm not qualified to do anything, really. Yeah. Like, you said that I'm safe, but I'm not qualified to do anything. So it's supposed to be, after you're qualified, the step onwards to actually make it so that you can be confident, you know what direction to go in to make it so that you can do this as a career. Because weightlifting's not going to get any better if everyone's kind of doing it as a community-driven thing where you do it to help out because you love it, which is great. And there's going to be some people who never do it for a job. They always jump in, do stuff because they love it, and then jump out because they've got another job, because that makes it a bit more fun, there's less pressure. But if you're like, I really want to coach for a living because coaching is what I'm good at, you can't sit there not being able to get any money for what you're doing because no one's showing you how to, and no one's going to show you how to. Like, when it comes to general fitness business, there's loads of different people you can follow that show you the business side of things, to show you, like, how do you pre-sell gym memberships for a CrossFit gym? How do you price things properly so that you can do all that stuff? How do you do your taxes, all this stuff? But with weightlifting and any other strength sports, it's like there's a lot of people that I know who they just didn't understand how to do their taxes, self-employed people, or that, you can claim like most of like your gym drop-ins back because it's expenses, because you're going to visit other gyms, you might need to do it for work. If you're getting trained to banger for the 5th time of the year because you're going to a Welsh comp, claim that back, like all that stuff. Like, there's some people that I've talked to who don't know that, but they've been coaching quite a few years and they're trying to make a career out of it. It's a really basic stuff that makes it so you can actually coach for a living. Not just the coaching stuff, but the stuff around it that lets you spend time being a better coach, because you don't have to do loads of other stuff on the side to make it happen. Like, that's what the coach's mentorship is supposed to be for. Make you a better coach, but also take care of the stuff around it so that you can facilitate yourself doing it as a job.
I think it's a fantastic idea. It really is. There's so much to unpick on there. But I think one of the things I'm really interested about is the business model. Obviously, we're at Atticus, and Jess and I have recently just sort of been given a bit of a green light from Rob from Ascension to sort of try and develop a weightlifting community and club within CrossFit Epsom. And it's the idea of how do you do that? How do you make money from it? To make it a sustainable business. And so I think that idea of being able to sort of coach coaches a bit more into opening their eyes into to try and get it a bit more money generated. So leading on to that, I've always seen weightlifting as a not-for-profit type thing.
Yes.
How do we change that?
I personally think it's a very...
What's the magic of?
I think it's a British thing, like as in even with, and not the whole of Britain or the whole of England, but I even remember playing rugby when I was younger, and when it was a case, depending what club you were at, if you said, I want to go to like around where I was, it was Leicester Tigers or Northampton Saints Academy, you said you wanted to go for that, you were seen as like, oh, so you're too good to play at a normal club, or you say, well, you want to be professional, oh, that's not like, why are you so fancy, like why don't you just play here, this is fine. It's like, and being ambitious and wanting to do more stuff was seen as weird. I remember even talking to, I hope he doesn't get, well, I'm going to say it now anyway, it's not really that bad, but I remember talking to Stu Martin about it when we were having a conversation about coaching in general, and he was just saying, if you see here, you'll get flack for advertising for the types of athletes you work best with, because it looks like you're cherry picking people to advertise, and it seems like this weird thing that, but you want people to pay you for coaching. But then I think it might have been Spencer Arnold, who was saying like, well no, if you know you work best with intermediate to advanced athletes who are going from nationals to international, why are you not advertising for that? Yeah. If you don't work well with beginners, but you work really well with that block of athletes and you've been doing it 10 years, why are you still working with the people that you struggle with, instead of going, well, those people I don't work well with, I'm going to get another coach on who's going to work with them, I'm going to do everything else. It's like, realistically, I picked up weightlifting in 10 minutes. My old strength and conditioning coach showed me a power snatch, showed me a clean, and went, if you just squat really fast and you catch it, you'll be able to lift more. I could do it straight away. Like, how am I going to, I've got no business coaching a large group of beginners all the time. I can do it, but it's also not what I'm most efficient at. Whereas when you get people who pick the sport up very quickly and they get to like intermediate, like competitive very quickly, that's the journey that I went down. So I know I'm going to work best with them. So Marcus is probably our coach where if someone doesn't understand a very good technical model, he can give them one very, very, very quickly. Like he can make them lift very solidly, very consistently, very quickly. So if I've got someone coming in that I know doesn't understand how to move properly, why am I going to take them when I could give it to him? Because another coach has just got a job instead of me taking it, and then I can wait for someone else to come in that I work better with. He gets more work, he gets to practice more coaching. That's the whole idea of it. I think to get over the attitude of it, I think this weird state of amateurism that also exists in rugby a little bit, where people are obsessed with keeping it amateur and not letting it be professional, needs to die. Because you can have amateur sport, you can have semi-professional sport, and you can have professional. There needs to be a pathway. Like the only time you're professional can't be after you've won a medal, and then you have to go and get sponsorships to be professional. Like how that is backwards. So you're going to let someone like Emily Campbell, or like who else has won a medal? I'm trying to think who else has won a medal in the Olympics. No one basically. It's basically Emily Campbell, and then most of our girls who've won like international medals like Euros or Commonwealth champs or Worlds. So they're going to get a negligible amount of funding that really is going to help cover some of their travel costs, maybe some of their food and stuff, and maybe like their weightlifting kit, like their shoes. And then they're going to win. Then you're going to go, oh, that's great. Now you've got to do some more work for a sponsorship so we can pay you for the job you've already done. So you've basically done, let's say, if you've done an Olympic cycle, you've probably done basically 4 years of an unpaid full-time athlete job. Yeah. And then afterwards you're going to get paid for the job you've already done, but now you've probably got more commitments because of it. Yeah. Like, that's ridiculous. I know the Olympics is all about amateurism and encouraging participation, but in order to make it so you can have the best, you can't have it where it costs you to go. Like if I were to add up the cost of, let's say, if I thought I was going to be good enough now to go for like Commonwealth Games, that'd be the only thing I'd even have a shred of a chance of going to. It's going to cost me more to go than it is to not go. And even though in the long run, if I went and if I promoted me going, it would be better off for Ronin in the long run in 7, 8, 9, 10 years time. There's a 4-year block where I can't work as much, I've got to train more, I can't see my friends, I can't really network or go around and do as much varied stuff like this. And then I've got to probably self-fund for a lot of the stuff. Yeah. So unless you enjoy being a full-time athlete, like why are you going to do that? Like there's a lot of guys who could probably go to powerlifting or bodybuilding or CrossFit and make a bit more money, not being anywhere near as good. Yep. Yeah. Whereas with weightlifting, it's like you could be top 5 in the world or in the country and just no one knows who you are.
Yeah.
Like there has to be more stuff to make it a cool sport, because there's enough people participating in it now where you can get more eyes on it, but there has to be a system to make it so that there's the top people who get paid full time or they can do it as a job. Then there's got to be some kind of middle rung where like you have semi-professional, like as in you've got so football you've got Prem, Champ, League. If you go into non-league, you can still get paid quite a lot of money per weekend, and you probably only train twice a week. And rugby was relatively similar. If you go a couple of steps down, you can still get paid like a couple £100 on a weekend, and you train twice a week. Yeah. The travel's more, but you still get compensated for what you're doing, because it's like, oh, so you're not at the top, but you're not the bottom either. This is taking away from the time. You've got to be compensated for it. So if you're getting people going to the British, they're always turning up and getting top 5. They're a good lifter, they're marketable. There's got to be something done to make it so that it's an attractive idea to be elite. Because we get lots of people, especially some of the girls, get really good and they get to like the top 10, top 15 level in like the British rankings, and they go, well, what do I do now? Like, genuinely, what do I do now? It's 4 or 5 years for me to maybe get top 5, but what do I get for being top 5? Not a lot. I'll still compete in weightlifting, but I don't really care about the British. I might do the English, or I'll do the Welsh Nationals as a guest, and then I'll do like athletics and I'll do CrossFit stuff, which is great because they're still training and doing it, but also you've probably just lost 5 people who could have been on a squad pushing the top level people who've gone out the back door because you don't have opportunities for them.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? You know, I remember, is it Rebecca Tyler?
Yes, she went across to powerlifting, I think, and then I don't know. I imagine she still trains. I don't know what she does anymore. But
and again, I think there was a fantastic prospect, but I could well imagine her and the family just sitting there thinking, is this really worth it?
Yeah, exactly.
How are we going to fund this? And such an exceptional talent, but just disappeared. Such a shame.
Well, so even if it just doesn't cost you anything once you get to the high level, so it's like with rugby, 7-a-side rugby was it put in the Olympics maybe 2 cycles ago, probably 3 cycles ago now, and that was to a point where if you were on invitational teams, even if it was like not a good pro side, but you went to like Amsterdam or something, usually they'd be like, right, you just need to get there, and then we'll cover as much of the rest as we can. So at least like, well, it's like a £70 flight. I've just got to get there. Like at least that's like, and I get to go to Amsterdam, and I get to socialise, I get to do stuff, I get kit, we get to play on a big stage. But when you're like, and again, it's better now, but when it was, let's say, I'm trying to think when I would have first competed in an English or a British, it's probably 5 years ago. That's weird. You've got to travel there. You've probably got to find an Airbnb or a hotel if you don't live near it. It was Milton Keynes, so I was lucky enough to live near there. The day always changes, so you don't know what day you're on. And then you're in a school theatre. It's not exactly glamorous. It's not exactly a big event. Whereas then the English this time round was amongst strength and depth and athletics and stuff. And you go and look at athletics and you think, there's some like events like that where there's teams where they're paying like probably upwards of £100 per person to go and compete in it, and they're not going to get anything for it. And even if they win, they probably get their travel money and Airbnb money back, and if they go out, it's going behind a bar somewhere. But you still get stuff, you get cool photos, you probably get recognised you've won the event, you probably get some attention from sponsors and brands if you're that good. Like you get something for it, and you get a bit of a buzz, and you go back to the event and think, oh, that was fun. Whereas with some, like with weightlifting, the only reason I did it to begin with was because I didn't want to do rugby as much anymore, and it was fun. But the gym stuff was the most fun part. It wasn't that fun going to competitions. Realistically, like, do I want to lift at 7 p.m. on a Sunday in an empty theatre in Milton Keynes where there's no food, we're warming up in a classroom, there's 4 to about, not really, do you know what I mean? But then like the English, like this year, that's where I was like, oh, you know what, I would like to do this again next year if I can do it, because we've got enough coaches that I can do it as well. Because like this is a competition. This isn't just like a weightlifting, it's a competition, like it's an event. That's what you need for it to need to happen. That's why the other Khrys from Ronin started trying to run those events at WIT. Because it's like, there's some people who will be very good lifters, never get to a British or an English, or not an A group, but like, so that means you never get to compete in a big competition. That's not really fair. Yeah. And it's also a case of, it's not really very interesting. If you always feel like you're second rate, and you're made to very much feel like it because you can only do tier 3s, because clubs can't run tier 2s, and you always feel like, well, especially if you're not in London, I never get to go to like a big event, like a big competition, unless I do CrossFit. It's like that needs to change as well. Yeah. So as soon as people feel like, oh, well, I get professional videos, I get to go to a big venue, I get prizes, then people are going to be like, well, no, I'll chuck some money out to do that. Whereas if it's just you're in a school sports hall again, and there's not really much going on.
It's funny, I've not thought about that.
Yeah.
I think it's, And fair play for Khrys for doing that. And obviously we TO'd at the WIT comps, and it's a different level. It's a different mindset in how to run a competition.
Yes.
And certainly what we've seen with after speaking to Matt in the last podcast, his vision 2.0. You can see a shift.
Yes.
In how BWR and the competitions seem to be run now. But I think that. How did you find FitFest and the
I think I much preferred it. I heard some, I'm not going to name them, I think he's immediately going to know I'm talking about him, but there was a few people in particular who were from before me, the old originals of British weightlifting, where they were much further at the school sports hall, there's so much going on, it's too much noise. It's no, this is exactly what it needs to be. It's a big warm-up room. They've made a big deal about being oh, by the way, this is the Commonwealth Games kit that you're warming up on. It's a Commonwealth Games kit you're lifting on. So you're I get to lift on the Commonwealth Games kit. So you get a feel for what an actual warm-up room's like. And realistically, if you look at a lot of back rooms at internationals, they're not that much different to what the setup was. They're just in their own contained hall or centre or wherever it is. But I thought that was much better because it's also, as much as I know some people found it distracting where it was, so if if you're the platform facing that way, there's people walking in through the door, people stop to watch, you naturally get a crowd. And if... I
thought it was great.
I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, I thought it was good. And I think it might have been Matt who suggested it, or maybe someone was suggesting it to Matt at the end when they were packing up, but what if you do what they do for... it's either the French lifting league or the Bundesliga where they just bump the stage up. So then you actually have it like it is at the Olympics where you're off the floor so then everyone can see it. Yeah. Then when people walk in, you're not just seeing some random person with a kid on their shoulders will walk past like that. But then also as they walk past, you can look up, you can focus, there's nothing in front of you, and then everyone can look at you. That's what it's supposed to be about. So you actually get a big competition atmosphere because there's only a few ways to create it. Either it's a big competition atmosphere like that, or it's somewhere that's going to be a bit more intimate like here, where if you get 30 people in there in chairs and they're making enough noise, there's music, it's going to feel pretty big. Yeah. And because this gym is it's a good balance, in my opinion, between almost family run community, but it is pretty flash, it's pretty nice. Yeah. So if you have that warm up room where you've got Atticus and then you have the main area where you've got the weightlifting bar, it doesn't take that much to make venues like this feel like a big deal. Yeah. Because realistically, you don't need that much space for weightlifting compared to other team sports and stuff. Yeah. So then if you just have some food vans, some prizes, some actual music on, and some banners and stuff, you just need to make normal competitions feel like a bit more of an event. Yeah. Which is being done. You have my friend Nick, Grip and Rip, he's basically any competition he can get to in his car, he'll go to. So then all competitions now start to look a bit more professional because there's always professional videography and photography at them.
Yeah. And his stuff does make a massive difference. I mean, when he's been somewhere, it's all over Instagram, isn't it?
Yes,
we went to was it Wild Boar he went to the other day? And I mean, it's a tier 3 comp, you'd normally see some shaky iPhone footage somewhere, but the fact that he's now sharing it everywhere makes then even the tier 3s feel like a bigger deal. So. Yeah,
and that Wild Boar comp, it's one of those ones where I'd want to do it because those videos do the actual venue justice. It makes it look like it's really good. Because you're right, if it's just a grainy iPhone video where the contrast is up to your eye or down,
head comes over,
then you just see blurry green stuff everywhere. Just I don't really know how this looks. But because it's a decent video and it's edited properly, you're this looks good. I want to go to this comp.
Yeah.
Because it's the same as if you actually go to Crystal Palace weightlifting, you look at it for what it is. Keith, and I think it's just Keith who does it now, but if you look at what he does with it to try and maintain it, it makes the kits all right, it makes the spaces good. He does a pretty good job of it by himself or whoever else helps him. But when you look at it for what it is, it's a pretty dingy, low ceiling room. But then when he used to hold the competitions for Southern Champs out the back on the track, it was a pretty big deal because you just got used to it being a big deal. Loads of good lifters went there. Yeah. You usually have a good crowd there because people go down because it was the only thing. So even if the venue wasn't ideal or it wasn't that flashy, it becomes a big deal because of how many people you get there all the time. So if those kinds of competitions, there's a higher standard of lifting there, you get videos, you get media, you get some other stuff going on around it, and it happens consistently, that becomes a standard. There's some comps now where people go and it's hold on, there's no why are we lifting on a CrossFit bar? Why is there no competition plates? That's a standard now, whereas before it's if you went and you just had a decent space and the bar's spinning the warm-up room, you'd be yeah, great. Yeah. Whereas now it's hold up, we're not lifting on competition kit. Why?
yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Where there's no music, there's no changing rooms, there's no toilet, there's no coffee truck. Do you know what I mean? It's starting to become a case of you don't want it to be too fancy, so people think that every competition is going to be super fancy, but also you have to do something. Especially if you want we were umming and ahhing about how expensive to make the WIT comp because as soon as you basically go to the big round number of 40 or 50 quid, everyone's going to be it's a bit expensive, isn't it? It's the same when we started doing Ronin online stuff. We didn't price it very high because when you look at the Overton window of what things cost, you can only push it so far before people go, well, that's really expensive compared to everything else, even if it is good.
Yeah.
So you have to slowly push it up. So if you're, what did we charge this time? I think it was 35 or 40. If we're charging 40 for that comp and you get 100 to 150 quid's worth of stuff in a goodie bag as soon as you get in, and you know there's music on, you know you're probably going to get some free photos and you can buy your slow-mo videos afterwards. And then you also win stuff, you get prizes, and you know it's a good event, you're going to get to meet loads of people there, and then someone else is charging 40 quid and just you get nothing. You just get a competition and you get there and you just get a handshake at the end. No music, no real vibe, no audience, no nothing. It's like...
Yeah, and that's sort of what's happening, isn't it? I mean, the WIT comp does sort of pull it up a little bit because that is quite competitively priced. I've seen tier 3 comps that are more than that. Yeah,
and I think it's also with the idea of what do you have to do to make those competitions happen at your venue, because if it's a case of like you have to put the price up to cover the hire of the venue, that's a bit different, and depending on how many lifters you can have in. But it's also just like it's got to become a business, and it's got to become more professional. Otherwise, we're in this weird balance between we want everything to be really fancy and really nice and really good, but we don't want to pay for it. So it's like at some point you've got to find the middle ground between, like, because we don't make any money off the WIT comps. If we break even after we've paid the TOs and everyone who's actually run the comp gets money for their weekend, that's fine. But that's what it's got to be, because again, we get a lot of business off the back of that for Ronin as well. So you have to look at it as well. Do you want there to be a good competition so more people can compete? There's more people in the sport, you get more money. Because if you run a good competition at your gym and people from local come in and then they look and you go, oh, this is a really great gym. Oh, the owner was nice. Oh, they always do good stuff. Oh, the kit's actually really good. You know what? I might come here and train more often. I might even ask about coaching because their coaches looked good. But if you turn up and everyone's miserable, it's a really bad atmosphere. And there's not really many people to comp. There's not really an audience. There's no prizes. There's no medals. There's no music. There's no nothing. Then you're not going to go there again. You're also going to judge that play. You're going to judge that space negatively because you're like, well, I've overpaid to go just for a comp. Like, why am I going to go back there?
Yeah. I like that approach really because it puts the onus of change back on the athlete and the coaches. Rather, a lot of the time when we're talking about change in weightlifting, we sort of revert back to BWL. What can BWL do? Whereas this attitude is a bit more about what we can do to make change and what athletes can do in terms of investing in a comp. Coaches can put on a better comp and athletes can pay for it.
I think it is very much... I think it was decentralised anyway. Like looking at British weightlifting... to change things, in an ideal world, that's how it would be. But I think the culture of always pushing blame elsewhere, it did come from top down. Like, because whenever you'd ask about something, or whenever, like even just emailing for simple stuff like DBS checks or coaches' licenses or when a competition was on or what the start list was, it was always stuff was shifted around. You can never get an answer. You can never do anything. Or, you know, God bless him, it was just basically Eddie Halstead answered every single email about anything and everything, and he was answering all the phone calls. That was my experience a couple of years ago. Whereas now, because Matt's there, I think it's starting to shift in the right direction. There's a lot more people who are working for BWL who I think are now going to have a better time and are going to be able to actually make a decent change. But also, if you think about how much stuff would go wrong when you contacted them before, or how much stuff would go wrong in general, they can only fix one, or they can only like fix different pieces at a time. So it's like, what's the biggest thing you fix? Well, the biggest thing is like the competitions. People always moan about how disorganised competitions were or how expensive it was or whatever. So if you fix competitions first, then more people are going to start competing. Then that means there's more money in it for coaches. Then you can up the standard of coaching. Like, you have to address one thing at a time. So I think whatever Matt and everyone at BWL does, there's always going to be someone who goes, oh yeah, but this is crap, this is terrible. It's like, well, yeah, but we're fixing this first. We can't do all of it at once, because I don't even think there's 50 of them on the team. I don't imagine. Like, so for a national governing body that's supposed to cover more than one country, it's like, they've only got so much they can do at once, do you know what I mean? So they've got to maintain some stuff. Some of the plates are going to wobble whilst they improve the rest, or just nothing gets done. So I think, as much as, like, my main gripe has always been education for coaches, but I also appreciate I came in and I basically knew how to train and had been coaching for years already. So when I came into it, I was already like, well, this coaching course doesn't really do much. But also, I went to university and the coaching and the standard of education there was also trash. So it's like, it's not a British weightlifting problem. It's genuinely the whoever accredits things, like Simpsborough UK Active and all that stuff. And there's different ones apart from Simps, that's the only one I can remember. But it's not down to just British weightlifting. It's the constraints and standards of everywhere else that are then being pushed upon them. So it's like, there's only so much you can do. And when I think people give feedback, because when you give feedback to Matt or, I don't know if he's still in charge of education, like Mark Hill, who used to be in charge of some of the education stuff, or Ashley, if you say, hey, I think this could be a good idea, do you want some feedback? They'll go, yeah, whatever you have. But if you just have a go at them all the time, Of course you're not going to listen if someone's just having a chop at you all the time. It's a bit different when the same thing goes wrong all the time and nothing gets changed. So then, like, when people get angry, it's like, well, we have all said multiple times. And when it's something new and it's like, oh, I think you might have missed something, do you want some help? They'll always go, yeah, we just need all the help we can get. So it's...
I mean, we've shared stuff on the Instagram story before, and Ashley's replied and been like, oh, that's a good idea, noted, and things like that. I mean, you don't even have to say it to them sometimes, do you? They pick it up. So,
Right. So you mentioned Mike a bit earlier on. And I'm interested as well because obviously you've spoken on podcasts before and sort of a bit about your history, so rugby. I think you said you were a rugby player that found weightlifting and then sort of switched over to be a weightlifter that occasionally did a bit of rugby. And you had an American coach for a while?
Yeah, so it was actually a guy called Lou DeMarco. When I went to school and I wanted to get better at rugby, they just said, well, you're not really going to get much bigger. And this is around the era when everything started to get professionalised. So every club, like London Wasps and Maxi Muscle were basically like the two big things you'd always see on like TV or like advertisers like, yeah, you need to get bigger, you need to go to the gym and stuff. So my head of sport knew nothing about the gym, which fair play to him. He went, I don't know anything. You need to go and look in the library or go on the internet, which all that came up was a website called T-Nation and bodybuilding.com. So I just put in rugby, American football and bodybuilding.com and T-Nation. It just came up with like, oh, you should probably jump sprint, do some power cleans, do some squats, do some neck stuff. That was literally it. That was basically all I could find. It was just different iterations of that. And then one thing came up, and I can't remember how I found it. Maybe one of my friends sent it to me. It was a guy called Lou DeMarco who just put, oh, here's how I use weightlifting for American football players at high school because it's good if you combine that with all the other traditional like strength training stuff. And it just had his email address on it. Oh, email me if you want any other programs. There's one spreadsheet on his website and it was like 2 days a week. He was like, email if you want any more. And when I asked him, oh, I'm trying to get into weightlifting, there's nothing around here where I am. So he went, oh, I think I mentioned I was from England, and then I think it turned out he had like a cousin like who lived like 20 minutes from me or something. So we got talking about that. Then he went, oh, just have whatever programs you want. Here's all the spreadsheets I've got. These are for this, these are for this. Here's how you should run them. And then he was like, message me if you want any advice. So every now and again, like every couple of months, I'd send him like a grainy video I took on my laptop, like webcam screen. Be like, what should I do? He'd give me some tips, and that was it. Yeah. So that was my first kind of online coaching experience. But that was very much just the basic, like high-low, you're going to do some doubles or triples lighter, then some heavier singles throughout the week and just undulating it. He helped me like learn how to pick accessory work and stuff. But it's very much, I learned how to be more autonomous because you just can't contact each other as quickly when you're doing it all via email. But that was the first person that got coached by for just weightlifting in any fashion. And when I think back to it, I didn't end up talking to him a lot, but the amount of stuff that he gave me to run with, like I learned how to train pretty well just off of that. Yeah. So basically barbell, like a very, very small platform in my house, just train on that, and every now and again be like, this program's done, what should I do next? He'd have a look at some of my lifts and stuff and he'd go like, yeah, I think you should do this or add this variation. Cool, go off and work on that 5-6 weeks to see what it looks like. And that was it. And then that was during rugby still, when I was kind of like doing half and half. And then I want to say it was when I was trying to look for competitions, and this was to a point where it was, you needed to be in a Facebook group that no one could send you a link to so that you could see all the posts for a competition at Crystal Palace or Bethnal Green or wherever else, or a uni.
It's so clicky like that sometimes.
You then had to send £20 in the post with
like
a sign up form.
Right now,
and I remembered it, and I apologised to him because I think like he thought I was taking the mick. I sent Keith Morgan for my first comp I signed up to. I sent him a postal check because I was like, I'm not sending £20 post. Someone's nicking that. Sent him a postal check, and he called me and said, "What is this?" And I was thinking, surely you know what it is, because I had to get some of the post office. I had to get like an old dear who worked in like the processing room to come out, and she was like, "Oh, I know what a postal check is. I'll do one for you." No one asked for them anymore. I was like, "Okay, cool." Yeah. Sent it to Keith, and he had to go at me on the phone. I was like, "What do you expect me to do?" He's like, "No, Keith, it's money." He's like, "This is fake.
It's money."
He was like, "This is fake. I'm not accepting this. It doesn't work. I don't know what this is like." "No, Keith, it's a check. Just take it to the bank." He was like, "Are you having me on? Is this gonna cash?" I was like, "Yes, it does." But he was adamant I could send him fake money. But that was the level of it. That was just how everyone did it. I remember I think back when there was KBT Education, there was supposed to be a weightlifting club there. I tried calling and emailing, couldn't get hold of anyone, couldn't get hold of any competition. So then, before the Crystal Palace one, I found, it was on a Facebook advert, just lower open, just give us, I think it was like £15 at the time, go down to, it was when Lower was in CrossFit Perpetua, which is now District, by Batsy Dogs and Cat's-Home. Yeah. So I just went there, competed. Mike said, you should do this more often. I did another Lower open because he said, just come and do another one. And then he said, you owe me 30 quid, I've signed you up to Keith's comp. You've got to be ready on this weekend, I'll give you a singlet if you need it. And then the next one I signed up for. And then that's how I got into competing, because I just didn't know how to do it. But if I didn't have someone to just, it wasn't even the training side, but there's more, he was like, oh, these are competitions you need to be ready for. These are the kind of numbers we need to look to hit. Here's how you pick your openers and stuff. Like, we didn't talk that much about technique and training. I just go down and train at lower every month, once. And then he'd sign me up for comps, and then he'd go with me, and that was it. But that was the biggest hurdle for me, because I already trained, I already knew how to lift, but I didn't know how to pick stuff for competition, what singlet to get, when to show up, what weight class I was in, do I need the blue book or do I need the little blue school book or not to put the totals in. Like, there's all that stuff, and then because all of it was assumed that you had someone to show you or take you to the comp, or you knew. So if you were like, I want to get into weightlifting, how do I do it? There was no one to tell you, and there wasn't really much information out there. Like, it wasn't made very simple. Whereas now, you could message any of your friends on Instagram who are just vaguely into CrossFit or weightlifting. Yeah. You go on Sport 80, you figure it out.
Yeah.
You figure it out quite quickly. Whereas back then it was, if you don't know who to send money to, if you don't know what Facebook page to go on, if you don't know what Facebook group to be in, if you don't know how competitions work, if you don't know about the blue book, you don't know how to navigate the website.
Yeah.
You don't know what to do.
It's nice that there's a full circle to what you're doing or what you were experiencing then, and from Mike, just thinking, I've got this talent here, whether he likes it or not, you're going into competition, and you're doing this, a similar thing in that you're guiding people through that process. So I'm interested in so you got the athlete career part. Where did the crossover go from, actually, not only am I good at this, but I like it, coaching, and I'm pretty good at coaching. Where did that sort of come into?
The only reason I went to university is because it was around the time when it went from being like, it was either $3,000 or $3,500 a year, and then it was like $9,000 a year. And I was talking to my old man about it, because I was just like, I just want to be an athlete as a job. I feel like I'm not good at anything else. And he was like, well, you're either working full time and you're going to be an athlete, or you can go to university whilst the fees are low, but you're not taking a year out to train. You've got to pick something. So I was like, well, I'll go to university and I'll do sport, because it was Bedford Blues Academy that I was at the time, and you got a year into university to be there to then try and get contracts or get sent off somewhere else. So I ended up going there, and then I'd always naturally end up helping other people out at the gym, because no one really knew what they were doing. It was hard to find information on how to start then, especially with weightlifting or any athletic stuff. So then I'd end up coaching people, helping out lads on the rugby team to do stuff. So then I'd end up running small group sessions with those of them who wanted to train. So I always ended up coaching and helping out a little bit. But it was always a case of, but I'm going to be an athlete first, I might coach later. And then I just got better and better at coaching. And then I looked at rugby the wrong way, mostly, I think, because I got really obsessed with just making it a job. By the time I started getting paid for it, however briefly that was for, and whatever we got paid, it was to a point where I'd achieved it, and I've been, I'm a professional athlete, I've been paid to actually play a sport. And then I was like, what do I do now? It's like, well, it's just the same but more difficult. If you just travel more, it all hurts more. You're playing against bigger men. You're basically just going to be beaten up all the time. And I did enjoy playing, but I'd ruined it for myself, because by the time I actually got to being you're basically there, I was like, actually, I've not actually enjoyed any of this building into it. So then when I got to weightlifting, I was like, I actually just enjoy just training and actually just doing the sport regardless of competition, and I still do. So then that was a better transfer. And when I started coaching more, all of a sudden it was, do I really want to have to go to Barking or to Hartford on a Tuesday and Thursday night? It's 5-6 hours out of the day, then play on a weekend, then get back on a Sunday. I missed 3 days of work. I missed 2 days of lifting. If I bust my knee up again, it's got to a point where rugby's I feel like I'd almost, not conscious, but I feel like, I've almost done what I said I wanted to do. And now I'm kind of do I need to just keep doing it? Because I've got to the next threshold was, you need to basically sack off training, weightlifting, and working as much to be able to try and push that. And I was I wasn't really prepared to do it. Whereas the weightlifting is I can still push something, but I can still do my job alongside it. So I just started off in Gen Pop PT. My first ever class was some of the guys I worked with at a gym in St Neots. We were all at this gym in Buckton in a marina, and they'd all rage quit the week before because they weren't getting paid properly. So then the day I got in was when all of them went, nah, we're not working here anymore. So I came in, got told, you just give me on the reception desk for your first day, fold towel, say hello. Then I got told, you need to run classes because the PTs have left. So it's actually I used to work with David, had just gone, this guy's paid me late again. Nah, I'm gone. So I had to cover his class, which I found out 6 months later when I started working with him. And it was legs, bums and tums. So I'd just done strength and conditioning at uni. I'd only ever coached strength and conditioning for rugby players. And then I just got presented with these like kind of like all these like quite like middle-aged women who just thought they were going to get a nice bands and like clamshells, abs, hollow holds class, and I was just like, I don't know what else to do apart from lunge, squat and jump here, I'm afraid. So then, but that was the first time I also saw like when someone was like, I can't squat, I was like, you're lying, you can. And then where someone's physically like, no, I can't do that movement, because I was just like, I don't know why can't you.
Yeah.
Like I didn't like that was the first time I started to understand, oh, there's actually people who can't do what we would consider basic stuff for weightlifting, like you can't reach your arms over your head, you can't air squat. So I started off doing that, then slowly transferred over to doing more like what was basically really functional fitness stuff. So if you imagine like a CrossFit, like foundations class, where it's all really, really basic stuff, the next gym that I worked at was kind of like all of it was that. And it was again, similar demographic. Then me and one of the guys that I used to work with there, Tom, opened a gym, which I'm pretty sure is still there, called Khrys Strength in Ampthill. And it got to the point where we wanted to do more weightlifting S&C stuff, and the direction the gym went in, it just kind of ended up like the first one we worked up at better, which wasn't what I was interested in. So it just got to a point where I was like, I still really want to do weightlifting. This is not that. So I'm probably going to go. And that's when Mike said, well, you can come down and work at lower. So that's how I ended up there. And then it kind of got to about, like a year and a half before COVID, where I was getting busier online. There just wasn't really, like me and Mike talked about it before I left, and we were just like, there's physically no way that I could get any more work through the gym in the foreseeable future. So it's basically like we're topped at where we're at. So he's like, I still went and trained there sometimes. I just did my own thing there, and then I started just kind of flitting about a little bit, trying to like figure out what I was doing. Because that was around the time as well when I think I wasn't taking competing as seriously, or I realised I wasn't going to. But I was like, I don't really know what I'm going to do otherwise. That's when coaching started. It kind of just went like coaching. I was always competing and trying to be good at a sport, but coaching slowly kind of went up and over it alongside of it.
Like the natural transition.
Yeah, very much so. But it's also like weird, like how, like, if our club's one of the biggest around, like, if you compare that to any other industry, it's like, like in IT and tech, it's like if you had like one of the best IT or tech companies around, and there was just like a 30-year-old running it, you'd be like, oh, well, how has this happened? Yeah. How have you got this to here so quickly? Like, I think because weightlifting is such a young sport, you look at a lot of like top coaches or people who are really big in it, it's like it's like you should still probably be competing and just coaching some classes, not running an entire club. Yep. Which is great because I enjoy doing it, but also like there's got to be a better way to do this pathway so you don't reach the top so quickly and then go, I've got to go do something else. Yeah. Right.
Which sort of links back to your coaching the coaches thing, right? Yeah. If you're thinking about sort of giving back in that way, so when you look at the coaching your coaches, we often talk about giving back to the sport, and I think that's probably how To The Bar started really, was wanting to give back a little bit more and try and get more people into TOing and supporting the competitions that way. And something I'm always interested in trying to figure out is why we struggle so much to get volunteers for not just TOing, but just get volunteers in general. So when you talk about the competitions reaching a certain standard, BWL or otherwise, the WIT ones, what do you think are the barriers that stop people from supporting in that sense?
I think there definitely used to be more of a tradition around if you're going to compete in weightlifting. I think George Manners, my friend Mercy's late coach, used to make it any lifter who basically he thought was serious about it. You're going to go get your TO's license because then you understand the rules. You're also going to go TO at comps because it's good to give back to the sport. Like it was an assumed thing. Yeah. I suppose it's the same as like a lot of habits you learn when you're a kid. Like you say pleases and thank yous, you open doors for people. Like it's not one of those things you think, oh, constantly I need to do this. It's just that thing. Well, you do it because why would you not? I think that's the thing that's got to be built back into it. And I think it's also a case of when you look at some of the volunteers, like I always know I'm going to see you two, Eddie Holstead, Carol, every comp I go to. I'm also going to see Diane, Jennifer and Sandra, every comp I go to the point where whenever I turn up at a comp, they go, what are you doing? It's like the same thing you are. This is every weekend for the next God knows how many years. Like every time I turn into a friend, it's like, Diane, fantastic. Yeah, I'll sign. Here's my coach's band. Like it's never that many different people. I think it's because, for one, you're always going to try to use the same people if you know they're reliable. But also I think some people maybe now appreciate how hard that job is. So then if it's a truly volunteer basis, it's going to be harder to get them involved. And especially outside of London, it's not like if you're going to volunteer at a comp on the weekend, you go to Lower, you're going to get on the tube to Vauxhall. If you're going to go to here, you just get an overground to here. If you're outside of London, it's a bigger commitment to be a volunteer. So I think the main thing is I think you've got to make it so that like TOing is a pretty essential thing, like coaching is an essential thing. Like it needs to not be volunteers. If it's going to be truly volunteer basis, like if you look at stuff like CrossFit Games, I think all of their refs and officials, I'm pretty sure they're volunteers. But I think it's like get there, then you basically get a free seat to the games. you get TO stuff, you get stuff for doing it. So even if it's volunteer because you're not being monetarily compensated, but you've got to be compensated by something. Like I remember, I think when it was very bad, this is before BD started to like get a lot better. It must have been almost 6 or 7 years ago. I remember one of my friends got asked, "Oh, do you want just messaged by someone at BD? Oh, do you want the new? We've got new tracksuits and stuff in, and t-shirts and polos. Do you want them?" It's like, "Oh yeah, how much are they? Like, what do I have to do?" It's like, "Oh, well, if you can travel up to this comp, we'll give it to you." And he was like, "If I work this out, it's cheaper for me by £100 to buy it off the website because I've got to travel up on the train from the south coast all the way up north, ref the comp for the whole weekend, miss a day of work, and pay for my own food, my hotel, and come back down. Are you going to pay for my hotel and food and give me the tracksuit? Oh no, we can only give you the clothing." It's like it has to be a more attractive concept somehow to be a volunteer. And I think that's down to, again, the same as what we said before. Competitions before weren't necessarily the most attractive concept because they weren't very flash. They didn't feel like an event. Whereas if you feel like you're going to an event to be in a part of an events team, and you know you're going to be compensated somehow with the experience and with other stuff you get, whether that's other opportunities to do competitions, then that's what's got to be important. Like even if at the WIT comp, like we don't pay people loads, but we pay people something for volunteering. We try and make sure they're fed. Eventually it'd be nice if people have to travel and we try to pay for some accommodation or give you something. Mm-hmm. So when it's a volunteer, it's like, well no, eventually it's not volunteering, you're just part of an events team. Like it has to go from being like, maybe you volunteer for the first 1 or 2 to help out, and then we go, oh, you're actually pretty good, so we're just going to put you on the list, and any time there's a comp, we're just going to call you and ask you, here's the rate, here's what we can pay, do you want to do it or not? Yeah. Like eventually it has to be to a point where at worst you don't lose anything for that weekend, and you know the event's good, and you're going to get to enjoy watching and being a part of it. Mm. And then eventually you have to get paid, because otherwise it's not going to get any better. So that's the reason why, because people now are thinking, oh well, I value being able to put stuff on social media, stuff like Grip and Rip, Follow the Lighthouse, there's one more I can't remember that's always there. But because people pay for their content, now it's gotten better. Because at the worst, they know, even if I only get 12 people buy packages, I've paid for myself to go up there, and I enjoy weightlifting. I get to see all my mates there. Yeah. It's a good experience. So it's building people into it to know that if they volunteer, at worst they don't lose anything. At best, they might get a little bit of money that's going to pay for their food and a nice experience while they're there. They get to meet people, spend time with their friends. It's a bit of a laugh, because the more volunteers you have, instead of it being like, you are going to be sat in that chair for 6 hours, and then like you two and Sandra are just going to rotate for the 6 hours, and you're like, this is not the one. Yeah. But do you know what I mean? Whereas, you know, like, oh, I've got a group, and then I get to go off and sit on the master's table. Then I get to go and sit in the back room. Everyone knows what they're doing. I can just kind of watch stuff, take photos, and chat to people. Then I go back into TOing. It makes it so it's like you get to be a part of an actual coordinated events team. It's enjoyable. Mm. Whereas otherwise, like any job, if you just get flogged, you just have to do it for 12 hours straight. Like, it's not going to be great. But if you know it's a job that you like, but you get scheduled breaks properly, so you can do the job well, and you know it's going to be a good experience, I think that's the key to it. And with competitions getting better, and with more resources becoming available, volunteers have to not become volunteers. They have to become paid parts of the events team, however that is. Yeah. And then that's what makes it easier. Yeah.
So we've been trying really hard to sort of show the different sides of TOing, because I sometimes think that people just think of a TO as a ref, somebody that sits in front and does red light, white light, you know. And that maybe makes a little bit of a them and us thing. Whereas for me, the TOing is much more about supporting the athletes and the coaches, particularly the marshals. I mean, marshals tables, anybody that follows to the bar knows the marshals table is my favourite place. That feels like you're actually part of something. So I wonder if that's what the athletes think of when they think about TOs. It's just the refs? Do you think there's more to it? Or is
I think that is part of it. I think it's also, I know that the standard of refereeing when I started was highly varied. So you could have terrible referees who didn't know what they're doing, didn't know what the hand signals were, didn't know what the rules were. So then you're already getting your back up before you go to the table. Whereas I know that if I see any of the people I mentioned before, or you two, if I go up to the desk, you're like, oh, this is going to be a great day. So I'm just going to sign the card. I'm going to say, please and thank you. Can I have this weight for this athlete? Thanks. Done. Cool. Yeah. Thanks so much. Hi, how are you? Have an actual decent conversation. And it's also, from that standpoint, even if you don't have that relationship with TOs, you've not been around weightlifting very long, do you think if you start getting your back up with TOs at a table, if they're not wrong, or if you're having a debate about something, do you think having a go at them and being prickly is going to get you any result? Like if they've red lighted you and you don't know why, and you start having a go at them, it's like, well, now they're going to judge you more harshly, because it's like we're not helping you out. Whereas if you don't know why you got red lighted, for example, and the coach goes up and I start, sorry, what was that for? Because I don't know. I've only had one person who was just a difficult person, just not even tell me why. Whereas the rest of the time when I've gone, what was that even for? And someone goes, they can't have elbow tape on. Oh, it's a little bit pressing on that right arm. Or they're letting the bar jar a bit. Because then you know, and it's like, okay, thanks. Then you can tell tell the athlete, which is partially learn the rules as a coach before you go. And if you don't know, ask and say, what was that for? Because I don't know. So most of the time, someone's going to help you out. So, and if you know that I don't know because I've said, I'm really sorry, but what was that for? Because I'm not sure. Then you go, okay, fair enough, here it is. And then everyone's working together. Whereas if coaches or athletes immediately get their backs up, as a TO, you're going to go, it's a long day for this, I'm not interacting with you, which is fair. Like, you've got to ref, sometimes 100 people in the day, collectively as a team. So if someone's being difficult, you're just not giving them anything. Because why would you? Realistically, that's what I got told in football and rugby, which took a while to stick with me. But once it kind of sunk in, I was like, well, yeah, of course. It's like, if a referee's made a decision and you ask why, even if it's wrong, and you say, but isn't this X instead of Z? And they go, no, it's this. Then it's like, you go, okay, that's fine. Because what you're going to get from arguing? Nothing. And if you've got a ref and if you've got to see them again every weekend for every other game or every single competition, like with some people when they don't point to their elbows, like if they don't know that rule, you need to point to your elbows first. And then you ask, what was that for? Oh, your elbows. Oh, well, my elbow doesn't lock out. And then someone said, you need to point to it, otherwise you don't know. And then you go, I didn't know that. And then it's like, that's okay, you didn't know that, but now you do. That's fine. But if you start arguing every single time, you're just going to, right, well, I know you press out now, and I'm going to see you in 2 weeks at the English or in 4 weeks. So you're getting red lighted every time I see your elbow bend because you don't want to point at it. Then I think that's the thing. Like, it's like you can work with TOs who are good, and you can also just do the thing with just don't assume someone's being an arsehole to you if like you don't know them.
And it's interesting because it circles back to what you were saying about before, that you as a coach, when you take athletes to comp, that you need to know the rules, and so you're there to help guide them to to as they're going out, get your thumb tape, whatever the tape is, or the hook, or whatever, tape around the elbows, all these sort of things. And then it goes back to what you were just saying, that we don't, as TOs, we don't want to be the person that's penalising someone on a platform for something that they should know. This is the last thing we want to do is hit a red button or to stop someone going out because they've got a polo shirt on instead of a singlet. So I think it's nice to be able to hear you say that, and it makes our lives a hell of a lot easier when we're TOing.
I think just talking about it helps, because sometimes you don't get time at any of these comps to be able to talk to the coaches or the athletes. So it's easy maybe for there to be a little bit of an us and them, especially when we're sitting there in suit and jacket.
All official.
Yeah, it's easy. But when you actually sit down and talk about it, all the TOs are there because they've been in the sport, or they love the sport, or at least the TOs that I know majority. I'm not going to do a blanket there. There are, most TOs are there for a good reason and want to, make it competitive. Like, I only ever uphold the rules so that it's fair, because if two people are competing for a gold medal and I just give everybody a white, there's not much point going to a comp. But also because I want everybody to do a good job, to enjoy themselves. So maybe it's just the opportunity for us all to talk a little bit more.
And it's also the whole thing of, like, I remember for the WIT comp we had some people say, oh, but why did I get red lighted for this? So then some people said, oh, but we don't know the rules, could you send us the rules? And we're like, we did. We sent the rule book and said, hey, if you've not done a comp before, here's the rule book. So then we started sending it multiple times to say, look, here's the main things you need to know. Here's a YouTube video from I think it's Catalyst, where he's like, here's the basic stuff you need to know. That's going to you probably don't need to know much else beyond this. And then some people would still go, but what did I get red light for? It's like, we did send you the rules. And if you know, especially as TOs, oh, by the way, we've sent the rule book out like 3 times. We've also sent a video on this. Here it is, so you know what they know. When you then go, well, they have been told, wait for the down signal, don't let it go before your chest, and you go, red light, and they go, what was that for? It's like, you've just dropped it from up there. And they go, but I didn't know. It's like, you have been. That's the rules, and you have been told. And as soon as you know, they've been given the chance to know the rules. The rules have been made clear, and this is the rules. You don't then feel bad feel like you're going to have to get your back up for giving them a red. And if they get their back up, it's like some people just like being upset. Some people actually just like being upset. And I think with those people, it's like, okay, you can be upset, but
I think it's the same thing for us as well, though, as TOs, that there's never an occasion where we just rock up to a comp. We'll always do a bit of reading beforehand, refresh our memories on things. Because it is, I always think that I have to sit there and watch a couple of lifts on Instagram just to start getting my eye in. It sounds bloody stupid, but if I just turn up to a comp, sit straight down in the rest chair, and someone comes out and lifts, I'm like, what the fuck am I doing again? Snatch, right? Okay, and you've got to really get into it and start remembering all these sort of the key rules before sitting down. Otherwise,
I think it's helpful as well, though, making TOs a little bit more accessible, because what I have noticed to the bar is we get a lot of people, I say a lot, people will message now and ask questions, and they'll say, why was this a no lift? Or what's this rule about? Or does this rule work like this? So I wonder sometimes if it's just about bringing down those barriers and making everything a little bit more accessible.
I think it is. I mean, I noticed it after, like, have you got your coach's license?
Yeah.
So you notice that it says coach and TO's license, even if you're not a TO.
Yeah.
I think the TO's course
the TO course used to be part of the coach's course, and then they took it out. But if you did try to TO, if you haven't done the TO, they won't let you. Yeah,
so that's what I thought. I was like, well, they kind of go through rules, but not really on the level 2. So I didn't know if it had changed. But I think, how much is the TO's course?
60 quid.
It's 60 quid. So I know that before they've gone, if you've got people at your club, we'll give you free ones or we'll make it a £5. If someone's signing up to a level 1, level 2, whether it's assistant coach or coach, just say, hey, do you want to add this for £5?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't cost you anything. You just have to go through all the stuff, do the multiple choice stuff on I can't remember, the Kajabi portal or whatever it is. And then you now have someone who, if they complete it, so pay the extra £5, you get to be a TO. Then all of a sudden it's like, well, now you have someone who's qualified to be a TO. You also have someone who understands the rules. And you now know if it's a new coach, but you see, coach and TO. Okay. So, and then they start to argue about the rules. Like, you know this. You've done the course. You've done the course. Come on now. Because there's different rules that I know that have progressed over time that I haven't known exactly because it wasn't on the course, or the rules. It's not like you get like a big email and be like, oh, hey, by the way, in bold, here's new rules. Like you would with a lot of other sports. So it's like, remember, like with rugby, every single time tackle laws have changed. Big bold bit in the newsletter and stuff. Yeah. Like the elbow tape thing. So like, it's either got to be above here or below here. You can't cover the elbow joint. It has to be a clear covering. I didn't know that, but then it's like you have to tell people, if your elbow's bad, we need to do something about it, because you can't just tape it up at comp or got to cover the whole thing, like stuff like that. Yeah. I also think if then everyone just gets used to being like, you've got to qualify as a TO, then when they have stuff at their club, they'll know they can TO. Yeah. And also if you've got let's say 3 coaches here and you know they're all TOs, you can be like, so you're going to be, you've only got 1 athlete on Saturday, so...
Guess who's in the chair? Yeah, exactly.
You got a chair afterwards, or you're going to load? Which one are you doing? Yeah. So I think it's like getting people used to getting people qualified as like a given.
Yeah.
And then, at least for the first time, even if they don't activate the TO's license, making sure they have it so they know the rules. And then it means that if you get 100 new coaches through in 2024, then they're all TOs. They've all been qualified for it. So they at least know the rules at worst. And at best, you've now got 100 new TOs who can all ref at their local club.
Yeah. It's just embedding it a little bit more, isn't it? Making it more apparent, I think.
Yeah.
So that probably leads quite nicely onto our last real question, doesn't it? Which is, obviously, a lot of the other podcasts that you've done, you've talked about changes in the sport and wanting to leave it better than you found it and things like that. And we've talked about Matt and BWL and the changes that they've made. So if you're looking forward, what other changes do you want to see coming into weightlifting?
I think a genuine pathway for weightlifting where, one, it's made a little bit clearer, because they've done a much better job of making the pathway clear as to what it is. Like, it does feel a lot more like when you go on the website, if you can find the pages, you hit these totals, you sign this form, you've got a good chance of going. Like, it's a bit easier to understand what the pathways are, but making it a pathway of not just here's world standard, here's Olympic standard, here's Commonwealth Games standards. Like, what's good if I'm just like semi-pro, or what's just good if I'm just a lifter who just goes to tier 3s. Like, making that there's actual tiers to it. Because at the moment it's, if you come out of age groups and you're just a senior level lifter, and let's say you don't go to training camps anymore because you're a part of that system, you just have to, now you go from maybe training at a club, maybe like here, or going to Nottingham or Loughborough or Bangor if you're in Wales. I can't remember where they go in Scotland. It's not Glasgow, it might be Edinburgh. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, you might just be at a JD gym by yourself now.
Yeah. Like,
there's got to be some kind of pathway to make it so you still feel like you're part of a development, even if you're largely going from like the professional part of it into the amateur part. Like, there's got to be something to feed upwards so people feel like there's a rung for them. Like with every CrossFit comp or functional fitness comp, you've got Turf Games, NFG, High Rocks, Fit Fest, Athex, Strength in Depth. You've got pairs comps to 3s comps to 4s comps to mixed 5s to Sid has I think Sid Orange has had a team of 12. And you have all these different levels so that you can test yourself amongst other people of similar levels. Yeah. And I think weightlifting needs that, because otherwise you get some people who get really demoralised when they look and they think, oh, top 5 to get to the British, and then they realise, oh, I got top 5, but I'm never getting top 3, like I'm never getting a medal. So then they go, well, I'll go back to CrossFit box and train for fun. Why do I need to peak for comps if I'm not getting anything? Or there needs to be a bit more, I don't know how you do it, but there needs to be a bit more of an increment to it. And I think making it more of a business and actually treating it like a business, I think Matt and the others there who've been around for a while are doing a good job of slowly progressing it towards that. But it needs to look like a professional sport.
Yeah.
It needs to look like a professional sport that goes down into amateur. The same way as, like, I think, I want to say boxing is like the highest participated sport on a fitness and a competitive level. Like, when you look at it, that has all the professional rungs, down to like prize fighting, down to white collar, down to amateur, down to you can just go to your local gym to just do a bit.
Yeah.
Like, there has to be those. I think there needs to be more steps so that people don't feel like if you're just training for weightlifting and you're not in a age group squad, you're not in a senior squad, you're just doing it for fun. Like, it is fun, but there needs to be some more stuff in there to be able to do it. Otherwise, we lose people. We get people in from CrossFit, in from wherever, and then they just go straight back out again.
Yeah.
Like, we need some way to keep people into it. So even if you have someone who only trains twice a week for weightlifting because they play, let's say they're really good at netball, or they're really good at football, or really good at rugby, but then they still want to compete because they understand the community and understand what level they can compete at alongside of it, there needs to be more of that, I think. Because you just need more people to stay in the sport. Because it's like, I think, I want to say it's mixed martial arts has the lowest ratio of participant to viewer, and that's like something that they're quite big on. It's like, you don't need to do it to understand it. Whereas with weightlifting, I think it's always going to be, if you do it, you understand it, so then you watch it.
Yeah.
So you need more people to do it and to stay in it and to actually enjoy it. Whereas if you get people kind of come in, train for a while, burn out, go back out to something else, you're not going to get people loving the sport and staying with it, because once you're out of it, you probably don't follow it as much. Right.
Yeah, it's one of the things that we picked up on with the British in Manchester last year, is that when we looked, I mean, it was a fantastic, sort of venue.
They undersold how good that was going to be. That was very well run. I enjoyed that one.
Flashy.
That was a good venue.
Yeah, really flashy.
But then when you looked out into the stands, the audience, I started thinking, well, how many of those have actually paid on the door just coming in off the street, or fans of weightlifting, or how many of these are actually friends of people, or coaches, or athletes that are going to be lifting? And I'm going to guess that it would be 70% were that category rather than, weightlifting. Oh, let's try that. Let's come in and have a look at what's going on.
Yeah.
And it's
it's how you pull people in, isn't it? And I think we've talked about this, but the Fit Fest thing is a great thing. I mean, when you were talking about people being in your eye line with the kids on the shoulders, I mean, I was sent a ref for the group that had Ramiro in it, and I was waiting for him to come back out for his second snatch, and look behind me, and the group of people, I've never seen that many people stop for a platform before, ever. And I very much doubt most of those were there for the weightlifting. I think they were probably there for CrossFit. So it's how we get those people in and then keep them in if we do manage to attract their attention.
I think Matt's had a good idea. I think I feel like I've probably been roped into it and not actually said yes. But there's like a BWL team that are putting into NFG or turf games.
Oh yes.
Because Matt was like, well, we keep asking courses, hey, come over here and do our stuff. But it's like we never go, well, we'll just come do your thing as well, and then you come do our thing. So then it's kind of like it's all very similar.
Yeah.
Like when you look at how we all train, like CrossFit is going to do more gymnastics and more of the other general stuff and less of our stuff. We're going to do way more of our stuff, less of theirs. But really, it should all be pretty similar. So it's like just mix in a bit more. And I think I got the impression from the event in Manchester, which they did undersell. It was one of the better setups they've ever had in terms of how grand it was. And it was a shame that not as many people came to watch it. But it's got to be an event. Like Fit Fest is an event. It's not just a fitness competition. It is a festival. It's an event. So like if you've got weightlifting, you need to make it a bit more of an event to start getting people into seats and wanting to go there. Because as much as you want to watch weightlifting, if you know that it's, let's say, there's a comp on, there's a couple of bits of like picky bits of like food at the front desk you can buy, but then there's not much else going on. Once you've watched your friends lift, you're going to go out and go somewhere else and come back again. Whereas if you know there's stuff there to buy and to do and to kind of entertain yourself with, so you're not just watching the same platform all day, then you're probably more likely to stick around for it. And I think that's when, like you're saying with Ramiro, where you got a big crowd watching it at Fit Fest at the English, right? You'll get more people like that who are, they're basically showmen when they're competing because they'll want to go in it because I want to lift in front of a big crowd. I want to try and people lift in a big crowd. Whereas otherwise you'll get it where no one's going to want to go for a British record in front of no one in a group of one in a sports hall. Whereas everyone, like if you know, well, because I remember they used to offer money for records. I don't know if they still do that. But imagine if you got offered money for a record, you might win some prizes if you get a medal and you're going to lift in front of 100 people.
Yeah.
And you get put on grip and rip and you might get sponsors from it. You get to interact with all the CrossFits and stuff. There's good food there. You're going to get attention from people. Like it's a big deal. Like the actual money of being paid to compete and be an athlete is, you don't necessarily need that to come in straight away. if the other stuff is there, where it feels like you're at an event and you're being appreciated as an athlete, and you're actually, there's something there to push you to be like, I'm going to try and do better because I'm here.
Yeah.
Right.
It's an incentive, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. There's something there about sponsors as well, like sponsors of events, but also being present. So there's lots of people that sponsor BWL, but you don't necessarily see them at, I mean, they were at the British, but it was small. It was small style, wasn't it? SBD with Aaron and Aleko, but...
I think if you, I mean, just looking at something like Strongman, you know, it wasn't until Giants Live came along and really took it to a new level. So this is such an amazing
to make
sport.
It a proper event,
You know, let's get the people in to sponsor it. Let's make it. They obviously get cash rewards for it and things like that.
Make it marketable.
So make it marketable, and it's become so much more of a competition now. I don't see why, you know, for that being quite, I see that as a minority sport compared to weightlifting.
Oh, for
sure,
So therefore, if they can do it, and
why can't we?
Yeah, I think with Strongman, it's the spectacle of it, and it's also. I mean, there's not a tremendous amount of rules from like, you know, like what kit you can use.
Can you
can
pick
I
it
use
up or not?
deadlifts? Can I use figure 8 straps? Can I take some super special Flintstones vitamin gummies to help me get bigger and stronger? Like, and everyone in Strongman, like, even some of my friends that do it, they are mental, but they are actually mental. They're actually crazy. So then you dial that up when you go to those events, and it's like, this is really cool to watch. And it's just weight that you can't imagine being that large or lifting the amount of weight they do. So then when you get to watch it, it's quite cool. And I think they've done a good job of making that spectacle of just these absolute giants actually be a thing. And then because of that, now all the natural federations now don't just have under 80, over 80 for men, and then no women's federation. There's now like under 70s, under 80s, under 90s, under 100s, under 110s, overs. Like they actually have proper weight classes for amateur drug tested strongman and strongwomen that actually have competitive athletes in it, because people are like, I really want to give that a go. Oh, now there's a way I can do it. Okay, cool. Now I'm going to go along. Oh, there's a competition in Cambridgeshire every weekend. Like it's getting it so that it's, I think weightlifting can be more relatable because you have weight classes. So it's like when you look at, if you've got someone who weighs like 70 kilos and then like, oh well, I watch Lasher lift at Worlds, I don't really get, it just seems like it's a sport for like big people. And then you watch someone who's your exact size lift, you're like, oh, I can do that. Oh, okay, there's somewhere that I can go, so I'm not just lifting against really big people. Okay, cool, that's really good. And I think it's making it,
relatable.
Making it relatable, making it exciting.
Yeah.
I think part of that is showing more of the backroom and showing training and stuff. Because there are some personalities, there are some nutty people in weightlifting who will make it look fun. So I think it's about trying to get that out there a bit as well.
Yeah, I thought that about FitFest, and I think we did talk about that afterwards, didn't we? The warm-up area at FitFest I loved, because you had the masters, you had the seniors, you had, you know, Olympians in there, for God's sake, next to masters women. I thought that was fantastic. Yeah. If you had had cameras in there for live feeding, I think that would have been great. Yeah, all right. Well, I think that's probably all that we had on our little agenda. So normally what we do at the end of a podcast now is we do a grip strength.
Fantastic.
Not ripping off Top Gear at all. We've got a little whiteboard over there. Look. There's not going to be a leader. Stig is not going to come through the door. But, so yeah, I think we're going to do what we did with Matt and maybe go and have a quick training session, and then when we're done, get the grip strength test out and film you.
Right, cool.
Yeah, see how strong you are.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming down.
Yeah,
that was a
thank you
pleasure.
very much.
That was fun.
All right, lovely. Thank you. Done.
Happy days. Done and dusted.
I can retire.
You've been listening to the Bar, strength in every story. Thanks so much for listening. We're so happy to have you as a member of our community. We have a passion for weightlifting, but we also have an insatiable curiosity about everyone's story. We hope you've enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review. And we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, find us on Instagram at _2_the bar. And be sure to hit the website at 2-thebar.com. See you next time on To The Bar. And remember, there's strength in every story.